Welcome to the Unscripted podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Nicastro. Today, we're going to be talking about the importance of learning oneself in leadership. I am thrilled to be joined today by Adam Gloss, who is the Chief Operating Officer at Impel and a 2025 Future of Field Service Standout Leader. Adam, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. Thrilled to
Thank you
be
for
here.
being here. Yes. Um, so, uh, we were just chatting, and you do such a good job on LinkedIn, sharing different aspects of your leadership journey. Not everyone might know this, but you are such a great connector of people, and you're always willing to network and help, but you're thoughtful about looking for opportunities to connect people in meaningful ways. And you had mentioned to me that recently you've been asked a lot for career advice, which makes perfect sense. And that this has kind of prompted you to reflect a bit on what you've learned about yourself and kind of what's important, what's not as important as maybe you once thought, over the course of your career. It's really interesting to get to a point where you're being asked for this type of advice, don't you think?
I do. A, it's flattering.
Hmm.
Uh, B, I think that some of it is by dint of title now.
Hmm.
Wow, you worked yourself into the C-suite. How did you do that?
Yeah.
What does your career journey look like? What advice would you have for me? I think there is more power in the
Hmm.
title or influence in the title than I might give it credit for.
Hmm.
That's not how I think about myself.
Yeah.
But it certainly creates a level of curiosity from people and a level of interest. And maybe because I am accessible,
Hmm.
um, thankfully people feel comfortable asking me the question.
Yeah. That's wonderful. I just think it's interesting to realize that you have gotten to a point in your career where anyone would think to ask, right? Like, because you're doing, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, wait a minute, like I have been at this for a long time. And, I guess I do have experiences I can share, but like, what does that say about how old I am now or like what I've lived through, right? That's how I feel. It's really interesting. So, but I'm excited to chat with you today about some of what you have reflected back on in those conversations. So, one point you made is that it's so important to understand what drives you and what motivates you. So, you said, what are the three or four things that will get you out of bed every day, excited to go to work, even when it's hard, because we all know that there are those bits of time. So, talk a little bit about why that's so important, but also how you kind of got to the point of realizing that you needed to clarify for yourself what those things are.
Yeah, I think number one, I've always had some sense of that myself.
Hmm.
It was always important to me that my work have some meaning to it, that it wasn't just transactional, that it
Hmm.
had some level of impact on the people I was working with and them in their lives, the communities that we serve, the greater world at some level, and the types of work that I have done have been things that have had some level of public benefit to them to this
Hmm.
day.
Hmm.
Um, there's a sense of mission that I've always found important to me,
Hmm.
but I've still, and even in that world, found myself sucked into roles that were not a good fit
Hmm.
or working for companies that were not really well aligned to my values and the things that I felt were important.
Hmm.
And you and I have talked about this. I left a role at one point because I was asked to do things that I felt were unethical.
Hmm.
Um, and if I had looked more carefully at the company I was going to work for and what their motivations were and what the outcomes they were looking for were, I would have realized that it probably was not a good fit.
Hmm.
They were in a field that I felt passionate about, um, but I didn't spend the time looking to see, are they really well aligned?
Hmm.
Do they have values at their core that align to what I want to do?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I would think that I'd never make that mistake again, but I
Right.
know by a fact I did make it one more time, right?
Mm-hmm.
That I worked for a company that's public. The first one was private equity backed. The second one was public, that had wonderful values that they espoused. Um, but when I got to work for them, I realized that they weren't lived.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right.
Well, so
Um,
you can do your due diligence, but sometimes
yes.
it is really, really hard to accurately assess, you know, is there a disconnect between what
Yes.
they say or how this seems and then what it will really be like? Yeah, that can
Right.
be really tricky.
Yeah. There's some homework you can do though. Right.
Mm-hmm.
There's the internet's a wonderful place now
Mm-hmm.
for. It's a wonderful and a horrible place
Yeah,
at the same
for
time.
sure.
But there's lots of information out there. And actually, if you network, you can find people. What's
Mm-hmm.
it like to work there, right?
Yeah.
What do they really live their values that way? Um, but that idea of what is it that drives you ever to do what you do? What's really critically important to you? And what are the three or four things that matter in the way that you think about your work and in the
Mm-hmm.
role that you're in? Because, like you said, there's days that aren't great,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's days that are just hard.
Yeah.
Everybody at some point, pardon the saying, has to eat some frogs,
Mm-hmm.
right? So how do you get through that?
Yeah.
Well, if you love 60, 70, 80% of what you do,
Mm-hmm.
the rest of that becomes easier. So I've just found that about myself. And actually, I had a coach that I worked with a few years ago who really helped me kind of solidify and identify what was it that I was looking for in my
Mm-hmm.
career, what were the things that were critically important to me, and really narrow it down to just a few.
Would you be
Right.
open
Here's
to
the
sharing yours?
yeah, I can. So for me, one of them is that I need to feel that I'm having the highest level of impact possible,
Mm-hmm.
that I am really being utilized in a way uh, that challenges me,
Mm-hmm.
that makes me feel like what I'm doing is worthwhile. And for me, that's about how broad can my impact be in an organization and how deep
Mm-hmm.
can it be.
Mm-hmm.
That's part of the reason, frankly, the move to the C-suite was important to me. I
Mm-hmm.
had a role before this as a divisional VP and built a business that I had a lot of autonomy in. But I knew I could do more for the company I was with and didn't have that opportunity there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so one is that it's level of impact. The second for me is I need to feel like I am building something. I like to build. I want to
Mm-hmm.
see tangible results of what I do. For that reason, I know that I could not be a great consultant,
Mm-hmm.
right? I can't go in and tell other people. I can tell other people how to fix their problems. I can tell everybody how to find a solution. I can work with them to bring them to that. I can do team building, all the things that consultants do and do well. But I like to see the actual result at the end, to have my hands in it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that's important to me. Um, it is critically important to me that I be able to be entrepreneurial, that I have a
Mm-hmm.
lot of autonomy and creativity. Right. So looking for environments that give me those few things
Mm-hmm.
are where I am. And then I need to know that values are aligned,
Mm-hmm.
that uh, culturally it's a good fit for me because I've been in places where it wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
What I've also learned is that while money matters,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't matter as much as those other three things, as those other few things, right?
Yeah.
So, and I've been in that situation before too, where I took a role because the money was really, really attractive, but
Mm-hmm.
I had to sacrifice something else that was more important
Yeah.
because of that.
So on that topic, I mean, I love this point about, really getting clear on what drives you and motivates you. This is something that I think for me, it's unfolded over time, but this was never a question that I'm not even sure if you asked me what are your three or four that I could articulate it well, right? Like I know, but it takes time, I think, to
Yeah,
really reflect on what do I what do I care about most? What makes me feel most fulfilled in the work that I do? So I love the point about doing that exercise and really, also thinking it can evolve over the
It
course of
does.
your career. And, the other point, I was speaking with someone a few weeks ago. A contact of mine asked me if I would be willing to talk with her daughter, who is 27 and just changed organizations, and she's really struggling. She's really struggling with she's remote and she feels disconnected. She has imposter syndrome. She was kind of the go-to person in her last role, and now she feels like she doesn't know anything. And as we were talking, it was kind of like one of those moments where there's a parallel between parenthood and work, because it's like, in that conversation, like it's all going to work itself out, and you're going to figure all of this out, right? But that doesn't help. But my point being, I would also say, like, for anyone who might be listening that is, younger, earlier on in their career, maybe thinking like, well, of course Adam can come up with these criteria. He's in the C-suite. You have just as much right in your 20s to know what's important for you and look for the best situation to fit that, right? And
Yes.
you know, um I want to be respectful and acknowledge that there's all sorts of situations in the corporate world, and everywhere, of privilege, right? So, maybe you are not in a position to, say, here's my list of demands, meet them, and I will take the role. But there's still value in reflecting and understanding what's important to you and looking for the best fit for that. Maybe you get to meet, like you said, 60% of it, and then you work up to 70% of it, or what have you. But everyone deserves to know what they want out of their work life, and to, have clarity around that and look for what is going to fit that best. But how do you
100%.
how do you reconcile then the money piece? Because, the reality also is that most working people are in their role, whatever that may be, because they need to make a living, right? And
Right.
so, you know, I like what you said about, you've realized that money is not the most important factor, but how do you weight that alongside these drivers that for you are very, very important?
Yeah. So I think there's a couple of ways to look at that. Um, but before I dive into that, I want to go
Hmm.
back to a couple of the things you said. Yes, that those three or four things that are critically important to you, not only can they change, they
Hmm.
will change.
Hmm.
They were very different for me when I was in my 20s and 30s and raising my family than they are now.
Hmm.
My family was my priority,
Hmm.
right? And there was a period of time that I spent 6, 7 years as a road warrior. That was
Hmm.
really hard on my family. And I made a very conscious choice. Okay, I need to find a role that does not require that.
Hmm.
Now I sacrificed other things because of that. I sacrificed the pace of my career progression. I sacrificed
Hmm.
pay for that. Um, but that was one of those things that was critically important at that time.
Hmm.
I have the same conversation with people in their 20s, whether those are people that work for or with me, or that come and ask for advice, or my own son,
Hmm.
uh, who I have these very conversations with because he's going through this. He's early in his career, and their struggles, and
Hmm.
they're real, right? So I think that those things will absolutely change, but I agree with you that it's critically important that you at least know what they are. Now, you may
Hmm.
make a conscious decision to sacrifice one or two of them in lieu of something else, or hey, I can't get this yet, but how do I develop a plan or a path that ultimately I can get to this, even if it takes me a few years?
Yeah.
How do I
It's a,
find something that
if
delivers
you
that?
don't mind me sharing something, when I was in my former career, right after I had had my second son, um, I had just come back from maternity leave, and I was pulled into a meeting with my boss and then the president of the company. And I won't even get into what was said, because I probably could have sued them if I were inclined to do so at that point. But what I will say is, in that moment and walking out of that room, like there was no part of me that felt I had a future at that company, And if I, had if I was a trust fund baby, maybe I would have told him to get lost and that would have been
Right.
my last day. But I was a mom of two young kids in a dual income household, and that just wasn't my reality. But that was the point in my mind where I thought, this just crossed a line that I'm not willing to tolerate. I was there another year and a half, because that was my reality, right? I couldn't just,
Yeah.
for a variety of reasons, and that's just real life, right? But to your point, then you're making a conscious choice, right? And
Correct.
you're saying, okay, well, mentally, I know where I stand. And now I need to do X, Y, and Z to get to the point where I can put myself into a different situation. Or, you can be in a situation where, what is most important to you, but for a variety of other reasons, for a finite amount of time, you have to choose something at odds with
Correct.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's reality. That's
Hmm.
life.
For sure.
Right. Again, not a trust fund baby either.
Hmm.
Right. I
Yep.
have more financial discretion now, certainly, than I did in my 20s or 30s.
Yeah.
Um, but even now, there's limits.
Hmm.
Right. I can only go so long without a
Yeah.
job.
Yeah.
And I'm blessed and fortunate to have one, and I recognize that. Right.
Hmm.
But yes, having understanding that you're making a choice gives you power.
Hmm.
Right, gives you some level of control. Okay, I don't
Right.
like where I'm at, but I know I'm making this choice for the right reasons. And in the meantime, I can devote more energy to thinking about how do I find that next role, prepare myself for that next role.
Hmm.
um,
Yeah, and we were chatting a bit before we started recording, Adam, about, the way I'm built, and I think you're similar. I give 200% of
mhm,
myself to what I'm doing. That was a moment that for me, I realized consciously, okay, like now I need to figure out how do I give, you know, 100% to the job they're paying me to do,
right.
which maybe is 50% of what I have to give, and then reallocate the other 150% to putting myself in a situation where I can leave, right?
Perfect.
And so you're right. Like that knowledge is power, though. Even if it can't be acted upon immediately, it's really good insight to have to either cope with a situation you need to be in temporarily or, take the steps or actions that you need to change it.
Yeah.
Um,
Back to the money question.
yeah.
I think the thing that I try to frame it with is, do I feel that I am being compensated fairly and equitably for the work that I am doing?
Hmm.
Nobody will ever pay me as much as I think I'm really worth.
Hmm.
Right. That's just the reality.
Yeah.
Um, and there are always jobs that will pay you more.
Hmm.
Always. Um, they may not be immediately in front of you, but somewhere there is a role that, if you're willing to sacrifice more and more of those things, will pay you to do that.
Yeah.
And it really becomes a question of balance, right? How do I balance those things that are critically important to me with a level of compensation where I feel like I'm being treated fairly and equitably
Hmm.
and rewarded for the work that I am doing in a way that recognizes what I bring to it? And
Hmm.
if that to me has balance to it, then your equation's balanced.
Yeah.
Now, there are some people who are more money motivated,
Yeah.
and that becomes one of those two or three things that are critically important to them. I know that it's like fourth or fifth on my list,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So I find balance in that equation that way.
What's interesting to me about what you just said is it makes me think about my comment of the way I'm built, I give more than what is required. Um,
Mhm.
so that can get tricky when it comes to the money piece of this because you just said, am I being compensated fairly and equitably for the job that I'm doing?
Right.
I have had to get really honest with myself in situations where I'm choosing to do more than the job I'm being paid for.
Correct.
That's a choice,
Yep.
right? So sometimes that can feel like they're not paying me what I'm worth. I care too much. I'm worth more than they see or value. And it's important to again know how you're built, right? Because the reality is you can care and you can pour yourself into what you do far beyond the scope of what you're being asked, but it's not necessarily anyone's responsibility to compensate you for that extra effort. So it comes back to, honestly, and I'm not trying to get us into a different conversation, but I know you and I have talked before about like trauma and the results of that. It comes back to, again, knowing yourself. Why am I giving more than I'm being asked to give? Am I doing it because I want to? Because it's in my list of three or four things that I just feel fills my cup. And if so,
Right.
I can't feel resentment toward my employer for not compensating me extra because I'm going above and beyond, right? And I'm not saying that you can't feel valued for going above and beyond or acknowledged or
Right.
recognized.
Yeah.
But
Thank
when we're
yous and
talking about
appreciation.
compensation, just
Right.
because you decide to do all of this extra, like you're still doing a role that they've assigned a certain salary
Value
range to,
to.
right?
Right.
Or I've also found myself having to be honest with myself, like, why am I doing this? Am I doing this because it's filling me up, or am I doing it because I feel like if I'm not always giving of myself, I'm not worthy of X, or or is there another driver here that is out of balance with my own sanity and self-care? So sometimes you get into kind of that side of it too. So yeah.
Yeah. Every job, every role has a value that's assigned to it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And every HR department has a pay range and they have
Mm-hmm.
pay equity they have to watch. And you can be the best person at that job in the highest range of that pay. And you're not going to get paid to do more than that because that's what the job is worth.
Mm-hmm.
Are you being paid fairly and equitably? Yes, you are
Right.
for the role that you're in. Now you can
Mm-hmm.
have the conversation. Hey, I'd like to have a different role. How do I make more money?
Mm-hmm.
Right. I'd like, with the effort that I'm putting in, what I'm showing you I'm capable of, what can that get me?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, there's this idea that some people have had that I have heard. I've heard them say it out loud. If I do a really great job at this, someone will recognize it and they're going to promote me.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to disabuse them of the idea that there's some job fairy that comes around and taps you on the shoulder with their magic wand and promotes you just because you're the best at what you do.
Yeah.
It really is about putting yourself out there and making it known. Here's what I want. How do I get the connections inside of my organization that help me to achieve that? How do I find mentorship? How do I find people to champion me for
Yeah.
these roles? There is more to it than that. Now, part of that equation is no, I'm going to ask for extra assignments. I'm going to ask for extra work. I understand they're not going to pay me for that because it's not part of my job. I'm doing it because I want to do it. To your
Mm-hmm.
point, why do you want to do it?
Mm-hmm.
Is it no, I want that advancement opportunity, and
Mm-hmm.
that's how you get them? Is it I really want to give back to the people I work with, and this is a way to do that, or I really want to improve the work environment, and this is a way to do that, or is it no, frankly, it just challenges me and makes me feel good, and I'm glad to do it, and okay, but
Yeah.
understand that that's about you, not about them. To your
Right.
point,
Mm-hmm.
and compensation is not going to necessarily follow that.
Yeah. And I want to make a point, 2 points actually about what you just said. One is your point about there's no job fairy that comes around and gives you your next pay raise or your next promotion. That's been hard for me to accept. Not because I just really want there to be a job fairy, but I am built to work and drive and build and grow and do the next right thing. Not to, it's not always comfortable for me to publicize that or advocate for the value that is associated with that or to ask for those next. I'm
Sure.
very much like, you should see how hard I'm working and that should speak for itself. And the reality is that's not true. You have to be your own advocate. You have to be having those
Yes.
conversations. So along that line, the other thing I wanted to clarify the point you made is if you are aiming for that progression and that's driving you wanting to take these extra assignments or do these extra things, make sure you're clarifying up front that that's your
Yes.
driver, right? Because there are organizations and situations where you can sign yourself up for a whole bunch of extra stuff and
And
there's
nothing.
no promotion waiting at the end of it.
No.
So if that is your driver for taking that on, you can also do it just because you want the experiences. You can do it to
Right.
meet other people. You can do it because you want to grow and learn
Yep.
and, add to your own skill set. And all of those things are fine. They might make you more marketable in your next role, right? But if the goal is I'm doing X, Y, or Z because I want to get to this next level, have that conversation up front.
Yeah, I think there's two things to unpack there. One is understand very clearly your drivers. Why do you want to get to the next level?
Mhm.
Right. I've had people
And
come
do
to me
you want to? Like
and do
that's the other
yes.
thing
Do you want
too
to?
is
And if you
yes,
do,
there's
why?
trade-offs at
Right.
every level, right?
Every level. Yep.
So, again, coming back to sort of I don't want to say ego, but like someone like me who, probably since I'm a child as a trauma response, it was drive, 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 build, build, build. Like, you have to get to a point where you reflect on not only what will that take, but like, then what do I get when I'm there? And do I even want that? Is that why I'm doing it? Or am I doing it because I feel like if I'm not progressing, I'm failing? Because
Yeah.
the reality is, you might find yourself in a situation where you just get to a point that you're happy and you're comfortable, and no one should make you feel bad about that.
No,
Like,
no,
that's a
no.
great thing.
So that was the second point I was going to make is that not everybody, it doesn't have to be about career progression.
Hmm.
You can be incredibly happy in the role that you're in and fulfilled, and it ticks all the boxes,
Hmm.
and God bless you. Like,
Yeah,
keep at it,
right.
right? Good for
Yeah,
you. Way to go.
yeah.
Celebrate that. If you want to advance your career, if you're thinking about different roles and different challenges, why? What is
Hmm.
it that you expect to get from that? And what are you willing to sacrifice for it? What do you want to get out of it?
Hmm.
And understand that why clearly. Like it comes back
Yeah.
to the first thing we talked about. What are your drivers? I've
Hmm.
had people come to me when roles were open. I want that promotion. Why? Well, I've been here a long time. It's the next logical step. I can tell you right now, you're not getting it.
Hmm.
Like I already made that decision as soon as those words came out of their
Right.
mouth. Right. Versus someone who came to me and said, I really want to see what I can give back to the team and how I advance them. And this to me seems the role that I can do that in. Okay. I've got alignment. Now I just have to see if they
Hmm.
have the aptitude and the ability to do the role.
Yeah.
Right. But that alignment was there. That person, I mean, these are both real people I'm talking about. I'm giving you examples without giving you names.
Hmm.
Um, the person who came to me first and said, I wanted the role, went back to him and explained why he didn't get it. But hey, I want to make you the best you can be at the role you're in. And yes, you've been here a long time. And I want people to look up you as the expert in what it is you do, because
Hmm.
I know that is one of your drivers. I knew them well, right? This is one of the things that you need is that external reinforcement, and that's going to get it for you. Let's talk about how
Hmm.
we do that for you.
Hmm.
He wasn't very consciously aware of what those three or four things were, but having worked with them long enough, I knew what they were.
Hmm.
And part of my job was to help him unpack that and see it.
Yeah.
He's incredibly successful where he is still. This is 7, 8 years later
Hmm.
and has not advanced,
Hmm.
but he shouldn't,
Yeah.
right? Um, Versus, no, I want that promotion. Okay, why? Right.
Hmm.
And then what are you going to get out of it? And then what's the next thing? And
Yeah.
yeah, I think clarity around that becomes really, really important.
Hmm.
But I love when people are happy in the role that they're in, but just want to keep getting better at it and grow at it and become the
Hmm.
best they can at it. We need
Yeah.
that too.
Yeah, for
Whether it's a
sure.
frontline service technician or whether it's a leader in the organization.
Hmm. Yeah. So I want to come back to the piece we touched on, which is the importance of finding a culture that aligns with your internal compass. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, so how have you learned what to look for? I know we said that there's no perfect way to make sure
No.
certain that like you've checked all the boxes, right? So it's there's no guarantees. But I have two questions. One is, how have you learned what to look for? And then how have you, in the situations you shared that you've been in, where despite your due diligence, realized, wow, this isn't really a great fit. It's not necessarily what I thought. How do you decide, you know, what to do about that?
Sure. So I will say I'm imperfect, obviously, and validating is always the right culture.
Mm-hmm.
What I've learned to do, number one, is to understand what my non-negotiables are.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So what my moral, ethical North Stars are. Here's the things that I just won't compromise,
Mm-hmm.
uh, whether that's integrity or fairness or whatever. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I look for companies that espouse those cultures, those cultural items, the values. Um, I then look at action.
Mm-hmm.
What do I see their leaders doing publicly, privately? Who do I know that knows
Mm-hmm.
them? Who do I know that works there or know someone that does work there that I can ask what it is, what's it really like?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you do your best, right? I think once you're in it, you realize too that in almost any business environment, there's a gray,
Mm-hmm.
right? In any organization, even in a nonprofit, there's gray.
Mm-hmm.
What level of gray are you willing to tolerate, right?
Yeah.
And then where are the lines that are black? Okay,
Yeah.
I won't cross that, but I get it. Like sometimes flexibility is needed in life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think understanding where those boundaries are is really important.
Mm-hmm.
I won't stand for the abuse of other people,
Mm-hmm.
myself or anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There's a black line for me.
Yeah.
Okay, if I see that, I'm out.
Mm-hmm.
Now I have to pay bills, right? I can only be
Mm-hmm.
out of work for so long. I might decide, okay, I know I'm leaving. I want to make sure I've got something before I go,
Right.
right? Or hey, I'm gonna at least get some feelers out and know that there's some activity or
Yeah.
something that
But
gives me
it's
some
kind of
long
that
term.
gut check moment of like, okay, like this isn't
Yeah,
it. So what's
right.
next? Yeah.
Yeah, but I think it's really and I won't speak to what anybody else's are. I think you need to know what those are.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but taking advantage of other people or whether that's financially or in some other way, abusing people,
Mm-hmm.
um, like those are hard black lines for me. I
Yeah.
prefer to find organizations that give back to their communities, that treat their people well, that recognize that their success is built off of their people's success,
Mm-hmm.
that look at building people up.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Does every organization do that consistently all the time? No.
Mm-hmm.
Do people make mistakes? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Again, I think you run into trouble if you are too rigid,
Mm-hmm.
but everyone does have lines you're just not going to cross.
Yeah.
But as much as possible, ask what's it like to work there, right? Do
Mm-hmm.
they really do this? Where do you see them out living those values? Is it reflected in the kind of work they do and the kind of clients that they have?
Mm-hmm.
um, I think you're seeing this writ large right now with a few tech companies where people went to work for them with this vision of they're going to make humanity better,
Mm-hmm.
and then they're doing work that somehow is being tied to arms or war or spying or
Mm-hmm.
right. And there's these people that are having these conflicts internally, and some people are choosing to leave. Other people say, okay, well, that's not what my work is, and I can keep doing what I do and focus on my mission. And other people might even be okay with it. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Everyone has their gradient to this.
Yeah.
um, but I think it's always imperfect.
Mm-hmm.
I if I'm batting 80% at being good at that, I'm doing really well.
Mm-hmm.
Like in terms of identifying, is
Yeah.
that a good match or
Yeah.
not a good match?
Well, the imperfection is a good reminder though too that like what you might envision as an ideal culture likely doesn't exist, right?
Right.
So it's just there's a need to be grounded in reality, like to know what's important to you and to look for things that align with that, but also to understand that, you know, there are very few, if any, organizations that are doing all of those things well consistently, that will check every box, right? So it
Yep.
becomes really, a process of what fits best, and then understanding that there are always ebbs and flows and ups and downs and pros and cons in every situation.
Yeah. I mean, the saying "the grass isn't greener on the other side" has been around for a very long time for a very
Hmm.
good reason.
Yeah.
The grass isn't greener somewhere else. It's just different grass,
Yeah,
right?
for
That's
sure.
all. That's all.
So I wanted to talk about, we live in this age of constant information, immediacy, everything's urgent, everyone's accessible all of the time. Um, and it's exhausting. So as a leader, how do you process or filter what's truly important and needs to be prioritized and what isn't?
So the first is I have really deep clarity about mission. What
Mm-hmm.
is it that we are trying to accomplish?
Mm-hmm.
The second thing is I have really deep clarity around what are my core responsibilities in that,
Mm-hmm.
and I filter everything against that.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I didn't invent it. I will not take credit for it. I use it consistently, and that's a four-quadrant model, right?
Mm-hmm.
I put everything into important or urgent on a quadrant. Mentally, I do it now.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's credited to Dwight Eisenhower for inventing that. God only knows if he did or not.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but that idea of how do you know if I'm going to filter out what's important or urgent? How do I know where it fits on that?
Mm-hmm.
Is is this going to make a difference in us achieving our vision or mission or goals?
Mm-hmm.
If the answer is no, it's not important.
Mm-hmm.
Just clearly,
Mm-hmm.
right? It might be important to somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
It might have urgency because someone else is asking for it, but it's not important.
Mm-hmm.
And the second thing is, what is it that I'm responsible and accountable for? Um, I am responsible in my world for creating and aligning plans to vision
Mm-hmm.
and achieving a result. I am responsible for the relationships with our employees and the relationships with our customers.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm responsible for enabling that work to happen.
Yeah.
If it doesn't fit in one of those things, it's not my job. It
Mm-hmm.
might be important to somebody else.
Yeah.
It's not important to me.
Yeah.
It might have urgency to someone else. It does not have urgency to me. Now, you have to be really careful about how you communicate that.
Sure.
I know this is really important to you, right? Let me
But I
explain
don't
what I'm
care.
working
No,
on.
I'm kidding.
I had someone tell me to that in a way that crystallized that for me incredibly well. Uh, Consider him a mentor. It was my a role that was a segue for me into management. I was still an individual contributor. I was working as a salesperson,
Mm-hmm.
and I was in a turnaround. Knew I was walking into a turnaround,
Mm-hmm.
and was really fighting against reputation in the market and a history
Mm-hmm.
that was out there, and trying to overcome that. And with issues that were going on still inside of our business that we were working to fix. And I walked into the general manager's office at one point and I said, "Look, I am trying to sell, but I got this and this and this and this in my way, and I need you to fix. I need you to fix." And I gave him a list. And he looked at me very calmly. And he said, "I know that's really important to you.
Mm-hmm.
Let me tell you what I'm working on." And he gave me his top 10. And I sat back. I'm like, "Never mind. You're
Mm-hmm.
right. Those are really important."
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, I think sometimes you have to, what he did for me was he let me into his world,
Mm-hmm.
and he created an ability for me to see outside of my silo or outside of my blinders. And what I learned from that stuck with me. It's that before I judge what anybody else, what I think is important, I need
Mm-hmm.
to understand what is going on in their world. How do I meet them
Yeah.
where they live? That's been invaluable for me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I'm not perfect at it. It's a hard skill. You still get stuck in your own head of why can't everyone see what I see, and
Mm-hmm.
why isn't this important to them? But understand that if you're creating those filters for yourself of here's what I'm trying to accomplish and here's what I need to do to make that happen, someone else has that same list. They
Mm-hmm.
don't always align.
Yeah.
I think one of the things you can do to help bridge that is to communicate that clearly. But I do think it's important to draw that line. You're right. Today's world, everything is urgent. Why
Mm-hmm.
didn't you respond to my message? Well, you just sent it 30 seconds ago.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
Why can't we track what's going on with this work? I can do that with Amazon. I know exactly where the package is. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if
Yeah.
you think you can buy this from Amazon, go ahead. Right?
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
more complex, right?
Yeah.
You can't say that to people, but you have to understand, well, this is where they're coming from. I
Mm-hmm.
do need to educate them. I do need to help them see what's in my world.
Yeah.
Maybe they appreciate it, maybe they don't. Um, I think the thing we've stopped doing is thinking about others in the way that we should be.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I I don't want to get too deep into the weeds on that or get up on a soapbox about it, but I think a lot of the problems and stress we have in the world is because we're all so caught up in ourselves and in our moment at this point, and we've kind
Yeah.
of lost touch with others.
And this actually brings me to the last point I want to make sure we talk about, which is this idea that we're so, quote, connected today in the sense of, we have all these forms of communication. We have, so many ways to share information and to, you know, demand responses from people and to, get status updates and to find people's time, etc. So in the digital sense, we're very, quote, connected, but I don't think we're as connected as we need to be as humans. And I think that's sort of what you're saying. And
It is.
so, how do you navigate that? How do you find time to disconnect for yourself and for your own well being, but also to make sure that you don't get so caught up in the digital realm of connectedness that you're not prioritizing the human connections?
Yeah. Um, so the first part first, I'm very intentional about the time I take to disconnect.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not always perfect at that either. There are periods in my life where I get really caught up in a lot of things are going on, or I have a lot of deadlines or responsibilities, and it's harder. Um, Anyone who follows me on LinkedIn, you'll see my thing is getting out into nature.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm a big hiker. I snowshoe. I ski, and I find that disconnecting from the modern world, and I mean it literally, I go places where there's no cell signal.
Mm-hmm.
No one could reach me if they wanted to. My phone's not
Mm-hmm.
dinging at me. It's not beeping me. It's not saying, "Look at me."
Yeah.
Right?
And
It doesn't
sometimes
do
that's a
anything.
helpful way to do it.
It's
If
very
you're
helpful.
really struggling to turn it off, right? Go where
Right?
you can't have it and
You can't have it.
yeah,
Yep.
force it. Yeah.
Uh-huh. I find that connection with nature incredibly centering.
Hmm.
I find it incredibly humbling. It keeps me balanced, for lack
Hmm.
of a better word. Gives me perspective of things I thought were really important become less so because,
Hmm.
frankly, nature doesn't care whether you live or die,
Hmm.
and you are out there
All of a
experiencing its
sudden, that
power.
urgent email is kind of like,
No, uh,
yeah,
yeah, yeah, you're
yeah.
experiencing its power, its beauty. It is changing. I think
Hmm.
people need to spend more time, frankly, in nature.
Yeah.
Um, I think the second part of your question is about intention.
Hmm.
You have to be intentional about seeking people out, even if it's just briefly.
Hmm.
How are things in your world? And being honest about asking that question where you really want an answer. It's not just being polite
Hmm.
and listening.
Yeah.
Um, it is walk around management. It is taking the time to ask people those questions. It is doing it um, regularly.
Hmm.
Um, I think the other thing is being accessible.
Hmm.
You can't go and do that and then not be prepared to listen when they tell you.
Sure.
You also need to be prepared when they come to you and you've established that level of trust or openness that they're going to come to you, and you need to be accessible when that happens.
Hmm.
That that becomes important at that time,
Hmm.
and other things need to be put aside or wait or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Um, and I think the combination of those does that. I think that, again, we're human. None of us are perfect at this. I can think of many times that I failed. to be what I just espoused.
Mm-hmm.
I try and learn from each of those. I know I'll still make the mistakes again.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think it is about intention. And I think people develop that rapport with you, that trust with you when you show up consistently the same way.
Mm-hmm.
Even when you make that mistake, they're like, all right, I get he's having a bad day, right? We
Yeah.
all have them. And they give you that grace, just
Yeah.
like you would give them that same grace for, all right, they're having a bad day. But then,
Mm-hmm.
hey, what's going on? Why are you having the bad day?
Yeah.
Um, and we're all human. We all have them,
Mm-hmm.
right?
That's right.
So,
Yeah. That's absolutely right. And I think it's a good reminder, that like I love your point about how overall strong you are at taking the time away to go into nature because you need that for yourself. You know, and you've learned that you need that to be effective in your role, right? And that it's a temporary step back to make you
right,
a lot more impactful when you return. And that learning is really important, right? And so it doesn't mean that there won't be situations where, things happen and all of a sudden you realize it's been a month since you protected that
yeah,
time, but you get back to it, right? And
yes,
you know that can fall back on it because you know how important it is and how much it helps you, and I think that coming back to the title of this, it's learning yourself, learning what is important to you. What do you need to have the best impact? How can you put yourself in situations that are most or best aligned with the values that you hold and the talents that you have, right? And yes, it will change over time, but I think when you get in the habit of taking that time to reflect and understand yourself, those skills don't change. So what you discover about what's most important to you in a phase of life or what you need to fuel yourself, those things may evolve, but the skill of
that
going
self-evaluation.
inward and being able to state your three priorities and being able to have clarity on what energizes you to do good work and what makes you feel depleted, and those are really important skills to have to be able to put yourself in the best situations and sustain over time. So
Yeah, society does not encourage, foster, teach you how to be self-aware.
mm-mm.
Society would actually prefer that you're not.
Mm-hmm.
It is something that you actually have to take the time to develop the skill on.
Yeah.
If you've been in therapy, that actually helps you
Mm-hmm.
with that. It's an experience I had when I was young. Unfortunately, for the reason I was there, unfortunately, that I found someone who could help me.
Yeah.
Um, uh, but beyond that, you can develop the skills and the practice. It can be meditation. It can
Mm-hmm.
be through exercise. It can be through
Time in
exploration and
nature.
reading. It can
Mm-hmm.
be right. There's lots of different ways to do it. Journaling, whatever it
Mm-hmm.
is, right? I think the thing is to develop that practice and that skill set and sharpen that saw. Yes, the things that you find about yourself will change over time as your
Mm-hmm.
life changes, as your priorities change, as you grow and mature. They change. That skill set is absolutely invaluable.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's an investment to go and develop it.
Yeah, absolutely. But otherwise, you find yourself on this hamster wheel,
Right.
of productivity that is important to someone else. Like you said, like society doesn't necessarily want you to reflect on what you want or need, right? Because if you don't have that knowledge, you just keep showing up and doing
That's
what's
right.
being asked, right?
And buying
Uh,
stuff or eating stuff
exactly.
or drinking
Yeah.
stuff or
Once you
whatever it
start
is.
asking yourself, wait, why am I doing this? What's important to me? What do I really want? Right? Those,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, it's
And the funny
power.
thing is, like, we started this conversation about work and career.
Hmm.
It's everything in life,
Yeah.
right? It's your personal life, it's your relationships, it's how you interact with others, it's what you want
Hmm.
for yourself, it's how that shows up in your work,
Yeah.
right? But if you're really truly a whole person, there is balance in all of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Really good stuff, Adam. Thank you so
Thanks.
much
We got
for
deep.
coming. Yeah, I mean, that's my favorite. Those are my favorite conversations. So thank you very, very much for coming on and sharing. And I really appreciate you.
Thank you.
You can find more by visiting the home of the Unscripted podcast at futureoffieldservice.com. The podcast is published in partnership with IFS. You can learn more at ifs.com. As always, thank you for listening.